It began with the sound of drills, grinding, shrill, unwelcome. That morning, I woke up early as usual, brewed my coffee, and wandered out onto the back porch of my house on Maple Hollow's quiet cul-de-sac. The view beyond my backyard was what sold me the place 10 years ago. Lake Windermere, glassy and calm, framed by a wall of evergreens, the kind of scene people used as wallpaper on desktops. But today, the peace fractured. Workers in orange vests and hard hats stood shoulder to shoulder, driving fence posts into the earth around the lake. Black iron spindles gleamed menacingly under the morning sun, slicing the once-open shoreline into sections like a zoo enclosure. I set my coffee down slowly. This wasn't just construction. This was a declaration of control. 2 hours later, I stood on the community walking path confronting Cynthia Greer, president of the Lake Windermere Homeowners Association. Her signature wide-brimmed hat shaded a face that held the kind of smile you'd expect from someone both delighted and indifferent. "Cynthia," I said, gesturing to the chaos. "What is this?" "A safety upgrade," she said, folding her arms. "We voted on it last week. Liability issues. It's for everyone's protection. No notice, no hearing, no chance for input. It was raised under new business. You weren't at the meeting." Because the agenda had read, in her clipped font, "Routine updates." I might have missed the meeting, but I knew the HOA bylaws. Major changes to community property required a 60% resident vote. There had been no vote. "This is public access," I protested. "Community property." Cynthia tilted her head. "The board acted in accordance with our charter. You're welcome to file a formal complaint." I knew that script. A formal complaint would disappear into a file cabinet. Maybe I'd get a call back in 6 months. Over the next few days, the fence spread like a virus. It wrapped around the lake's perimeter, blocking off old fishing spots, the canoe launch, even the wooden dock I'd built myself under a previous board's blessing. A single gate stood at the main entrance, a black steel sentinel, padlocked. A week later, the rules arrived by mail. Access permitted Saturday and Sunday, 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. All visitors must be accompanied by a board member. Key remains in HOA custody. Violators subject to fines. The lake had become a museum exhibit. Worse, it was now guarded by the self-appointed curators of order, Cynthia's HOA clique, people more obsessed with preserving property value than community. At the next monthly meeting in the community center, the room was packed. Angry murmurs swelled like a storm cloud as I stood and addressed the board. "You bypassed protocol," I said. "This fence wasn't just illegal. It was underhanded." "We acted swiftly to protect residents," Cynthia replied, unfazed. "We had an incident last spring. Unsupervised teens, alcohol. Someone could have drowned." A woman near the back called out, "So you punish all of us?" Cynthia held up a folder. "We have liability studies, data, insurance concerns. Would you prefer a lawsuit?" There it was. The weaponized fear of litigation. I noticed something else, the board's smug certainty. They didn't fear us. Because they knew most people wouldn't fight. They'd grumble, adjust, move on. The HOA was a fortress. Cynthia was its queen. But I wasn't built to kneel. Later that evening, after most of the crowd had dispersed, I lingered near the lake. The moon hung above like a pale sentinel. The new fence, sleek and unyielding, glinted like a scar across the shoreline. My daughter, Lily, joined me. Barefoot and 12, she had grown up with her toes in this water. Her face was drawn. "We can't go swimming anymore?" she asked. I looked at her, my jaw tight. "Not unless the HOA lets us." She was quiet a moment. Then she said, "That's stupid." It was. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat at my desk and pulled out the HOA charter, highlighting every line that defined community property, every clause about voting procedure, transparency, quorum requirements. It was dry, dense reading, but it had cracks. Cracks wide enough to wedge in truth. I started drafting flyers. "Did you vote to fence off the lake? Do you know you have no key? The lake belongs to us, not them." I printed 50, then 100. By sunrise, They were tucked under every door in Maple Hollow. What followed wasn't revolution, but it was rumble. Neighbors stopped me on walks, asking questions. People began showing up to meetings. Someone created a Facebook group, Take Back Windermere. The board responded with letters and warnings. Cynthia issued a community-wide statement accusing certain residents of sowing dissent and endangering the harmony of the neighborhood. She didn't name me, but she didn't have to. Still, the fence stood. A few began to accept it. Others plotted petty protests. Someone left a rubber duck army at the gate. Someone else tied a caution. Nonsense ahead, ribbon across the path. But as far as the board was concerned, we were noise. Easily ignored. And then came a moment, a sliver, a possibility, where the tide shifted. I was walking the lake's edge, studying how the fence curled around a section near the east bank. It made an awkward bend unnatural, as if avoiding something. Behind that bend, hidden under years of brush, was a small boathouse. Abandoned, weather-beaten. I pulled up the county land records when I got home. Parcel #18, LK. Not listed under HOA holdings. Privately owned. That night, for the first time in weeks, I smiled. The fence may have closed the lake to all of us, but it had missed one door. The holding company that owned parcel #18, LK was obscure, its address listed in Phoenix, its name as bland as wallpaper. Bluestone Equities, LLC. I sent an inquiry through a real estate attorney I trusted, half expecting it to lead nowhere. But 2 days later, I got a call. "It's yours if the price is right," the man said. His voice was dry and transactional. They were planning to offload it anyway. Back taxes, no development value. You can wire payment or make an offer. I made an offer. Lower than expected. He accepted. I was the owner of the forgotten tip of Lake Windermere. Parcel #18, LK was barely a quarter acre, but it jutted directly into the lake. Its shoreline curved just beyond the reach of the HOA's authority. What made it priceless wasn't just location, it was the attached deed. Buried in county archives was a clause, handwritten and notarized in 1953, said parcel to retain perpetual riparian rights and physical access to Lake Windermere via historical easement. The historical easement was the old gravel path, now fenced over. The HOA had built their barricade over land that didn't belong to them. I sent an email to the board requesting immediate access to my property. I attached the deed. I kept the tone neutral. Cynthia replied within hours. The board has determined that all lake access falls under regulated community policy. Unauthorized entry through HOA-controlled gates remains prohibited. She didn't get it. I filed a complaint in county court that same week. It wasn't about revenge, not yet. It was about righting a wrong. They'd weaponized bureaucracy, turned shared joy into managed scarcity. But I had something they couldn't regulate: private ownership.
Court took 4 weeks.
The judge was swift. HOA constructed an access barrier over non-HOA land, he said, tapping his gavel. Owner of parcel #18, LK is entitled to reasonable and legal access. The gate will be unlocked, or an individual key granted. They chose the key. It arrived by courier 2 days later, polished brass on a ribbon of navy blue, enclosed in a sterile envelope from the HOA attorney. No apology. I walked through the gate that evening. Just me, a folding chair, and a thermos of coffee. I sat on the crumbling dock behind the boathouse and stared across the moonlit lake. The camera on the gate post blinked red. Let them watch. The next morning, I brought a toolkit and began repairs on the dock. I didn't ask. I didn't announce it. By the end of the week, neighbors began to stop by. Some asked questions. Some lingered on the other side of the fence, curious. "You're allowed to do this?" one man asked. "It's my land," I said simply. He smiled. "Wish I'd thought of that." I didn't charge admission. I didn't lock the gate behind me. If someone asked politely, I let them join.
Swim.
Cast a line. Enjoy what had always belonged to all of us in spirit. Cynthia sent a formal cease and desist. I posted the court ruling on a bulletin board next to the gate. The message was clear. Their fence couldn't stop me. And now, It couldn't stop anyone willing to walk through with me. Change was coming. Owning the parcel was one thing. Owning the narrative, that was something else entirely. It began subtly. A couple from Birch Lane started walking their golden retriever along the lake path again. When they reached the gate, I waved them through. They hesitated, then smiled, then entered. Word spread faster than I expected. People who once kept to themselves started showing up. Some brought folding chairs. Others came with paddleboards, fishing gear, picnic baskets. No one asked for permission. They just followed me in. Legally, it was my land. Morally, it felt like all of ours again. I never charged a dime. I never posted rules. But people behaved. Better than the HOA gave them credit for. Within a week, the HOA's composure cracked. Cynthia's first move was to send me another letter, this one more aggressive. It accused me of creating an unauthorized public access point and claimed I was operating a facility on HOA-adjacent land. I posted that letter next to the gate too, right beside the court's ruling. The juxtaposition spoke louder than I ever could. Next came the patrols. HOA volunteers stationed themselves by the gate on Saturdays, clipboards in hand, writing down names, snapping pictures. They didn't have legal authority, but intimidation had worked for them before. It didn't work now. The community was shifting. People saw the fence for what it was, a symbol of fear, of control. And they saw my little plot of land as an act of quiet defiance. I added a bench to the dock, repainted the boathouse in a soft blue, installed solar lanterns along the edge for evening walks. It didn't take long before neighbors started donating. One brought a set of lawn games, another a canoe. A retired carpenter helped me build a new set of steps leading to the water. They called it the key lot. The irony didn't escape me, but power hates being mocked. And Cynthia wasn't one to lose quietly. One evening, I came home to find a violation notice stuck to my door, an official-looking document citing non-conforming improvements and threatening daily fines if I continued unauthorized activity. This was new. The board had passed an emergency bylaw amendment claiming any visible alterations facing HOA land required pre-approval. It was an obvious move, a retroactive leash meant for one neck, mine. I took a photo of the notice, then went to the county office the next morning. What I found in public records made me laugh out loud in the middle of a silent archive room. The HOA had filed the bylaw amendment after I received my court ruling. Retroactive rules don't hold legal water. So I called a lawyer. A good one. She fired off a cease and desist of our own, attached with a motion to dismiss the violation entirely. She added a little salt, a warning that if the board continued to target my property selectively, I'd seek damages. That quieted them for a while. But Cynthia's pride ran deeper than her logic. 2 weeks later, she showed up in person, unannounced, at the dock. I was sitting with Lily, who was drawing in her sketch pad. "I'd like to speak privately," Cynthia said, arms crossed. I glanced at Lily. "She can stay." Cynthia sighed. "This has gone too far. You're undermining the HOA's authority. People are treating your lot like it's a park. Maybe because it feels more like one than anything the HOA provides." "This isn't sustainable," she snapped. "You've turned the lake into a political stunt." "I turned nothing. You built a fence. I bought a door. You're exploiting a loophole." "No," I said calmly. "I'm using the law, the same way you did when you installed that fence without a vote." Her nostrils flared. "We will revisit the ruling. We'll challenge it. The board is within its rights." "No, Cynthia. You had your chance. You made your move. And you lost." She didn't respond, just looked at Lily for a moment, then turned and walked away. That night, the Facebook group swelled. A neighbor had filmed the confrontation from the path. It went semi-viral in local circles. Comments poured in. Finally, someone stood up to her. "He's doing more for the community than the board ever did." That fence was never about safety. I didn't feel victorious, just tired. The fight had become something larger than I'd planned. But it wasn't over. At the next HOA meeting, the community center was packed. People who hadn't attended in years stood against the back wall. Cynthia opened the meeting with a thin smile and tried to read the agenda. Someone raised a hand. Then another. Then a dozen. The crowd wanted answers. They demanded new elections. According to the bylaws, which I'd highlighted and brought copies of, if over 1/3 of the residents signed a petition, a special vote could be called to recall the board. By the end of that week, the signatures were collected. Cynthia's board had 30 days left. 30 days. That's how long the board had before the special election. And for once, Cynthia couldn't maneuver around it. The petition had met the threshold, the signatures were verified, and the community had spoken. Now all that remained was to count the days until the vote. Tension simmered beneath the neighborhood's polite facade. Lawn signs sprouted overnight, some supporting transparency and access, others preaching order and accountability. Behind the slogans, it was clear this was about the lake, about the fence, about power. I stayed quiet. I didn't campaign. I didn't attend the strategy meetings at the community center. But I listened. I hosted conversations on the dock. I invited people to speak freely. And they did, about how the HOA had gradually become less a steward of the neighborhood and more an authoritarian force. A slate of 5 new candidates emerged: parents, retirees, teachers, and one sharp-tongued IT consultant named Raj who had once been fined for hanging wind chimes deemed nonconforming. These weren't radicals, just neighbors tired of silence. The night before the vote, Cynthia sent a final email blast. Disorder threatens everything we've built. Rules keep us safe. Structure is not tyranny. It is the backbone of community. Even now, she didn't understand. Election day came. The community center bustled with more life than I'd ever seen. People brought lawn chairs, kids, even snacks. It felt like a block party disguised as a reckoning. Voting ended at dusk. An hour later, the results were announced. All 5 new candidates had won. Cynthia wasn't just unseated, she was erased. The applause was loud, sustained. But when it faded, something unexpected happened. The new board didn't gloat. Raj stepped forward, thanked Cynthia for her years of service, and proposed their first motion: to amend the bylaws to guarantee unrestricted, equitable access to Lake Windermere for all residents. It passed unanimously. The fence remained, more costly to remove than anyone wanted to pay for, but the gate was unlocked. The cameras came down, and the lake, finally, was free. I still owned parcel #18LK. I could have sold it. Developers even sniffed around, offering cash. But I didn't want to cash out. I wanted to build something better. That fall, I held a small dedication. Just a dozen neighbors and Lily, who helped paint the sign. The Commons dock. I had transformed the old boathouse into a lending shack. Life vests, tackle, paddles. A few benches circled a fire pit nearby. Nothing grand, but it mattered. Lily's drawing. Our lake surrounded by homes, people together, no fences, hung inside the boathouse on a corkboard. She'd drawn it the night the gate was unlocked. Cynthia moved out the following spring. Sold her house quietly. No drama. Just a for sale sign one morning, and a moving truck a few weeks later. I heard she took a job in another HOA across the state. Perhaps one more suited to her tastes. I didn't rejoice. I felt relief. The lake is quiet again, but not in the same way it used to be. It's alive. Kids laugh on paddleboards. Couples picnic under the willows. Even the ducks seem less timid. Sometimes I sit on the dock alone, feet dangling above the water, and watch the reflections ripple out like echoes of every decision, every confrontation, every key turned in defiance. We don't own the lake. Not really. Not me, not the HOA. We share it. And in that sharing, we found something more valuable than property lines or bylaws. We found community.